truth to power. It's easy to say, until you've done it and paid the price. Somebody who knows is Cynthia Stimpel, the South African Airways whistleblower, who is now working to support other whistleblowers. Welcome, Cynthia.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you for having me on your show.
Please remind our viewers of your own whistleblowing history.
Thanks, Chris. This goes way back, though, in 2016. And to put it in a nutshell, is that basically I held a very senior position as group treasurer at SAA, having worked there for 10 years prior in their treasury division as their group, as the head of financial risk manager, and then obviously as their group treasurer. It was in that role whereby I discovered that our board was firstly interfering in operational matters, secondly, giving instruction on how managers should be signing off or contravening our policies and procedures in our organization. And in my area, there was literally interference in the board doing three things. One, they decided on a client that did not go through the request for proposal process and wanted me to ratify it on the board resolution, which I refused. The second part was that they wanted to choose a client, different suppliers that weren't banks to supply SA with funding. And then the third was a client was chosen through our procurement department, whereby the client was chosen to review SAA's funding mechanism, its loan book, its leases, and its balance sheet. And when this client won the deal at a cost of 2.68 million, they wanted to change the scope for this client now to source funding, which this client would have earned over $250 million, 256 million. And it was then where I also stopped it, refused to firstly sign. I was again called in to sign the proposal to go to the bid adjudication committee, which I refused. And then it still bypassed my department, whereby it was approved via round robin at our board level. When this was done and when I found out, I then contacted and reported it to our executive management within the organization, and to the chief audit committee officer and the chief risk officer. And when nothing happened, I then took it to National Treasury, which is SAA's shareholder. That was in May and June, and when nothing happened, I then took it to Outer in July. And that's when Outer broke the story. Outer managed to intervene, got some lawyers to interdict, and we managed to stop the funding. So we managed to save SAA the 256 million which should have been paid out. For that, I was suspended and subsequently left SAA. So that's in a nutshell. The plight of
What do you think of SAA now?
I'm actually sad, Chris, very sad that, that a company, more than 80 years old organization, that was really the pride of our country, and citizens who flew SAA flew it with pride. The staff, the pilots, the crew that worked for SAA I think they loved the airline. And now that it's reached the point where it's trying so hard to be resurrected, through funding from government, through new consortiums to co-funded, it's sad that SA is not the same SA it was in the glory days. So for me, I'm just sad that it's reached this point. And I would have liked us to have had a stable airline like Ethiopia has. Theirs is 100% owned by government. Government does not get involved in any decision making in the board, in any of its executive placements, and it runs perfectly. And that's where we should get to, that government doesn't get involved. It should be run like a business.
From your personal experience and from the experiences of those you are helping now, what are the biggest challenges faced by whistleblowers in South Africa?
So it's really huge challenges, Chris, and some of challenges are far more harsh to some whistleblowers. And if I just have to generalize what we all face, and then I'll hone into some specifics for you. So we all face the loss of our jobs, and the loss of your job has the impact then of your career and your reputation. And it's very, very difficult to find future work. So I have a master's, and I always thought that I'll definitely find a job. I've got an MBA, I've got a banking experience, I've got treasury experience, I've got risk experience. I'll definitely find a job. And it was shocking for me that my CVs were not even replied to with a negative. It was just ignored. So, and when I speak to many whistleblowers, the same. People like Bianca Goodson say she sent over 200 applications and received none. Many whistleblowers are still writing to me and saying, I'm sending out my CV again and no response. So besides that, they are victimized and retaliated against. They are so vilified that their name and their reputation in the media is made out to be this bad person. They made out to, in the organizations, what happens when you are initially suspended, the organization sends out an email making up trumped up charges that you haven't even seen. In my case, I haven't even seen any charges yet when I was suspended, but the email went out to staff saying that I committed misconduct, financial misconduct. When that happens, people won't touch you with a barge pole. And your own team that you're working with do not contact you. Your own peer group in your organization do not contact you. So it's also a strategy of isolation. And with that isolation, whistleblowers are then feel extremely alone, which in itself is also victimization. Then once the company starts laying their charges, you're on the back foot because you have to defend those charges. And if they're not true, it's harder for you to defend because the organizations all have deep pockets, so they have access to funds and the best legal firms, whereas the whistleblower has no funding and no access to legal firms to defend their position. Many have walked away and not defended their position because they didn't have funds, like Dr. Masimba Dawa. And many others. Others have tried to fight their funds, like Martha Ngoya and Tiro Holele, using their own personal funds, and now they are drained, that they're unable to continue further. And organizations know this, so they continue the big fight. So for me, that's the unfair part of it, and many whistleblowers suffer then illnesses. They suffer mental illnesses, they suffer psychological illnesses. Their families are impacted, that it results in divorces, or the fact that the parent is declared an unfit parent and children are then taken away from that parent when they really need that support. And so at the worst part, all these negativity, the victimization, vilification happens around a whistleblower. So it is really extreme.
In cases they even... Sorry.
Yes, go ahead. Some are assassinated.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No problem. Thank you for that. But they do, some commit suicide because the stress is so much that they feel, had I not disclosed, my family would not be in this position. So it's best I get rid of myself. And so people have committed suicide. And then there are those who have been assassinated, like Mas Pako, like Babita Deokaran, others like Lennox Garana. He committed suicide within Parliament because no one was listening to him. And he left his suicide note stating he's doing this because he wants people to take notice that Parliament was not running effectively and running against its own policies and internal procedures. So for me, that says a lot. So whistleblowers truly need to be supported in every aspect of their lives.
And you are now doing that with the House of Whistleblowers. Please tell us how it was founded and what support services it is offering to other whistleblowers.
Thanks for this very important question, Chris. Through My own experience and many other whistleblowers' experience, we had got together and realized that there is a huge gap in the market. There's the gap in supporting whistleblowers and just finding the right legal support. There's the gap in the psychological support. Once you lose your job, you have no means to pay your medical aid. So how do you then take care of yourself physically and mentally? And if you holistically suffering some sort of other outbreak in your body because from a health issue, how do you take care of that? So in discussions, a group of people got together and decided on forming Whistleblower House. The people were Ivan Pillay at the time, Liesel Groenewald, and Bianca Goodson. So they were the first to get together. I, in the background, was working as a support group with whistleblowers, and I just started a WhatsApp group working with whistleblowers in the background. And then the three, Liesel, Ivan and Bianca, got hold of Ben and asked him to join and see how we could really build the organization. And then they contacted me because they heard that I was already working with whistleblowers. Would I like to form part of the organization or continue with my own? And I said, well, there's so much work to be done with whistleblowers. I'm happy to work with them, and which I did. And that's how we initially formed. Our business proposition, or our service offering we have to whistleblowers, is giving them legal support. So we're partnering with legal firms that when a whistleblower comes to us and saying they need legal, we then go to these legal organizations and saying, here's the whistleblower, here's their story, how can you assist them? We also partner with the SAA, the Psychological Society of South Africa, together with individual psychologists to work with whistleblowers to help them on this journey of healing from a mental state and just getting them back to operating the way they were. This, I find, has been a real need for whistleblowers, and it's the first step we're taking now with whistleblowers, is saying, once they come to us, we're saying, we're going to refer you to psychologists, then we'll deal with the legal side afterwards, unless there's a pressing time frame that they just got suspended and we need the legal matter to go, but then we work in tandem. We're also offering security and safety for whistleblowers. We're currently working with an organization that provides an app for the whistleblowers that they can easily just get some safety measure for them. And at the same time, for those who need a placement where they need to be out of their home and in a safe environment, we then fund that so that they could go and stay in a safe environment. And we're looking at bed and breakfast rather than having a safe home, because people can eventually trace a safe home. So then they can just move 1 month on month to various areas and they're in a safe position. And then lastly, we're also providing financial services for whistleblowers. Reason being that they cannot find work. They're going into debt. They're unable to pay school fees. They're unable to pay their bonds or their rent or put food on the table. And so we're using this, we're calling it just sustainable funding at this point in time, to help the whistleblower just tide them over. And we're doing that over a period of 3 months at a time, just to support the whistleblower so they can have some funding to help them. So that's what our service offering is, Chris.
Yes, you said you were founded just over a year ago. How many whistleblowers have you helped in that time?
So on board in numbers that we have at the moment, if I just say as at yesterday, we've got about 160 whistleblowers who have come to us. We help them in various forms. So some only legal, some legal and psychological, some only psychological, some with safety only, and some with a combination, and some with coaching. We've been able to help with coaching. Out of financial, I think we've helped 20 to date with financial amounts that we've only been able to help this year since February, once we got in funding. But from last year, we negotiated a lot of pro bono services. So we've been able to help quite a lot of people from a pro bono perspective. And now that we're having funding, we're helping with legal costs. We're helping with the psychological costs. Just more recently, we've been able to help with psychiatric costs. As and when a client has gone through the psychological help and the psychologists recommend they need further psychiatric help, we then help with that. For observation, place them in a hospital and just they go in for observation for about 7 days or 10 days. And so we're assisting with that. There's definitely this need, which is a holistic need for whistleblowers. And we feel we are making a difference. And the feedback we're getting from our clients, like the one person recently just said, "You are saving my life. For 4 years, I've been working on this. There's been no one helping me. And now suddenly I'm seeing the help come through and just thank you, thank you, thank you." So we can see that we're making a difference for the whistleblowers.
And these whistleblowers that you are helping, are they from government departments, the private sector? Where do they mainly come from?
So it's a wide range, Chris. So as small as a school governing board, whereby a person observed that money is being taken, the school fees are being taken and reported on it and lost their jobs, we're supporting them in their legal case as well as financial and counseling. As high as, so it's a range of government, private, and small NGOs. So, for instance, there's as high as PIC, people coming from PIC, or people coming from the NPA, or people coming from banks, or people coming from small NGOs that you may think is running efficiently. And then this client will come and saying, "I've just done this. All I've done was reported this because it's my job. If I notice anything untoward, it is against the policies and procedures. I reported it. But when I reported it, I'm the one that's now being pushed out of the organization." So we see a lot of this unfair treatment obviously going along. And it's a range. It's across every organization. And we're just happy to have started this organization to be able to help people. Thanks.
Considering the severe consequences of whistleblowing, is there ever a circumstance in which you would advise somebody not to whistleblow?
That's a very tricky question. I know that many whistleblowers have stated that had they known better and what they suffered, they won't blow the whistle. But my recommendation to all whistleblowers out there is please do blow the whistle. And the reason for that is not to get you into trouble. The reason is that it is the right thing to do, that you, in your small way, you stop the corruption from happening or exacerbating. So that, I feel, is the role of every citizen in our country or the citizen of the world. But do it safely, blow it anonymously. Don't get your name out there that you can get the public against you or your organization against you. Don't do it where your name is vilified and that you lose your job and your livelihood. So try and find out before you do anything, what is the best way to blow the whistle and how can I do it safely and how can I keep my name anonymous. And it's we will help you as Whistleblower House. We will put you in touch with legal organizations who can do it and make sure that you are protected, that the Protected Disclosures Act is fully enacted and enforced, and that your name does not get out there in the public space, and that you do not lose your job. But I feel it's incumbent on each one of us as a citizen of South Africa, as an employee of an organization, no matter what, be it in the environmental space, be it in a school governing board, be it in a huge organization like Bain, for instance. If you notice something untoward, it's going against your policies, against your procedures, it's contravening the legal framework of the country, it's contravening all our laws. It's up to us as citizens to hold people accountable and then to speak out. But do it safely, because we do not want any harm anymore to any whistleblowers. Thanks.
Cynthia, have you had time to look at the book written by former Eskom boss, Andre de Ruyter?
I only found out about the book being launched when I was actually on an interview with Cape Talk. So I hadn't read it, and I've decided I'm going to buy the book, which I have now, and I'm currently reading it. At this point in time, I'll reserve until I've finished the book. But I have read all the media write-ups about his book and what is being said. So there's a huge controversy around his book at this point in time. For me, it's important that he spoke out. It's important that he stated what was happening in Eskom. And as his role as chief executive officer, he needed to have highlighted what the issues are, because we as citizens are suffering. If I recall that, if I go back to I was born into having electricity. My parents may not have been born into having electricity, but I was. So it's a right. And our constitution says we have the right to human dignity, and having electricity is a right to human dignity, I find. And right now, none of us have that right. It's been taken away from us. So it really, I see it as something against that as a human right violation, and therefore with Doretta speaking out and notifying everyone that this is what's been going down in the organization, which we all knew about. It has been publicized. It has been spoken about by government themselves, by Doretta in prior interviews prior to his book. So for me, I know the controversy, I think, is more government, when he should have spoken out, why he didn't speak out, or should have spoken out to Scopa or whatever. But if I recall, there were discussions constantly about it, and we had load shedding since 2008. And my perception is that we should just fix the problem. As a country, we should stop pointing fingers at the person who speaks out, because that's where the victimization comes in. It's about solving the problem, and how can we, as citizens, as corporates, as big business, together with government, solve this problem as quickly as possible, and not shoot the messenger. So that's my 2 cents worth. Thank you.
Do you think Eskom could have been saved if somebody had come forward a long time ago?
I believe so. I believe that is the problem we've had in South Africa, that we've probably, working in our various fields, whether you're in Transnet, whether you're in Eskom, whether we're at SAA, you would have noticed things aren't going according to the way we should have worked. We all have a work ethic. There is a code of conduct in every organization. There are policies and procedures in every organization, and there are rules of what to do and what not to do. And people notice stuff and then turn a blind eye, saying, well, it's not my business. And I believe that strongly, that had we as workers, employees, citizens, managers, executive managers, board members, noticed things and said, this actually affects my sphere of influence, I should speak about it. Had we done it, certain things would have come out sooner, because nothing breaks down overnight unless you're bombing it, But when infrastructure breaks down slowly, like we've seen, let's take Transnet now for an example. Slowly we saw the stations being demised. We saw the railway tracks being slowly taken away. We saw the trains weren't running on time. It's all those things that happens over time. And suddenly now we have a rail network that's not functioning. And when the demise started with Eskom years ago, stating they needed better capacity, I recall that conversation. It was all over the front page news. Yet government didn't listen and didn't put any extra effort or funding or focus or strategy behind it. And now we're sitting with a situation where nothing's working. And you look back and you ask yourself, where did it go wrong? And I believe we all have a role to play, to be active citizens, to speak out, no matter how small it is, that's saying, you know what, there was this working, it's not working anymore. Can we fix it to 100%? And I think there was a book written by Rudy Giuliani many years ago called Broken Windows, whereby he started with fixing New York by fixing the broken windows. And if you first fix your windows in your own home, let's just go back to our own home, internalize it. If I have a broken window and I don't fix it, the second window will break and the third window will break. And when the cold comes in, then I ask myself, why is it so cold when I haven't fixed my windows? It's fixing those basics, going back to basics. Fix those windows. When you fix the windows, you're able to fix the doors. When you fix the doors, you can fix the roof. When you fix the roof, you fix everything and your infrastructure, and you maintain constant maintenance. And I think that's what we stopped doing.
That was Cynthia Stimpel, one of South Africa's most famous whistleblowers, speaking to BizNews